Welcome to Ash of Grim, where the shadows speak and the truth is buried beneath the quiet. There are some roads that appear on maps even though they should not exist at all. People enter them by mistake. What they believe is a shortcut quietly becomes a closing door. In this video, you will hear 3 different stories set in the Appalachian Mountains. Different people lost on the same pass, the same fog holding familiar voices, and one shared warning: do not stop here. Because this road does not choose the lost, it chooses those who pause and listen. This part of the Appalachian Mountains looks like a gray line on most maps. It lies far from major cities, and the pass has been used unwillingly, even by truck drivers, for years. The surrounding towns are small, quiet, and closed in on themselves. The people who live there are polite and welcoming, but when the mountain road comes up, their sentences become shorter. They answer questions but avoid details. It feels as if something might wake up if they speak too much. Michael Adams was seeing this region for the first time. His job required frequent travel between states, and he was comfortable on the road. Long drives did not tire him. Night drives actually made him feel calmer. The roads were empty and his thoughts slowed down. That night had started the same way. He was driving from Pennsylvania toward West Virginia. The air was cool, the sky was heavy with clouds. Rain was expected, but had not yet started. The main road was closed due to an accident, and there was a detour. His navigation app suggested an alternative route. It appeared to be only a few minutes shorter. Michael did not hesitate. Most roads in this region were already narrow and mountainous. He thought he was used to it. The first 10 minutes were completely normal. The road curved gently, and the asphalt was in good condition. The trees began to grow closer together, and the light seemed to fade little by little, as if he were being pulled into the forest. Then the fog appeared, not suddenly, but slowly. At first, it was a thin layer in front of the headlights. Then it thickened. After a few turns, he could barely see the edges of the road. The radio began to crackle. One station that had been clear suddenly went silent. Michael changed the frequency. All of them were empty. He glanced at his phone. There was no signal. It bothered him, but he did not panic. That was common in mountainous areas. He kept driving. As the fog grew denser, his sense of time began to blur. He slowed down. The headlights seemed to sink into the fog. The light did not move forward, but felt as if it were being swallowed back. He noticed a road sign. It was old, and the paint was faded. It read, "Fog Pass." Michael frowned. He had not seen that name on his navigation. After passing the sign, the road became even narrower. The trees leaned inward over the asphalt, and branches occasionally brushed against the car. As he rounded a curve, he saw someone standing by the side of the road. It was an old man, thin and upright. He was wearing a jacket far too light for the weather. There was no hat on his head. He stood perfectly still inside the fog. Michael hit the brakes on instinct. The car did not skid, but his heart began to race. He lowered the window slightly. "Are you all right?" he asked. His voice was swallowed by the fog. The man slowly turned his head. His face was pale and drawn. His eyes were sunken but sharp. His lips were dry. When he spoke, his voice sounded almost like the wind. "Do not stop here. Keep going." Michael wanted to ask something. He was about to offer help, but the man had already turned away and begun walking into the fog. After 2 steps, his silhouette disappeared, as if the fog had consumed him. Michael checked the mirror. There was no one behind him. He continued driving. A feeling of unease settled into his chest. It felt as if he had passed through the wrong door. 5 minutes later, he saw the same sign again. Fog Pass. The same scratch marks, the same faded letters. Michael stopped the car. He turned the navigation off and back on. The map spun, but showed no route. The phone still had no signal. The fog did not lift. The engine was running, but the sound felt muffled. He drove on. When he rounded the same curve for the third time and saw the sign again, he was certain he was trapped in a loop. He stopped the car and opened the door. Cold air hit his face. The fog was heavy and his breath was visible. The silence was deep and oppressive. There were no birds, no insects, not even wind. He heard breathing behind him. When he turned around, the old man was there again. This time, he was very close. His face was clearer. Dark shadows lay beneath his eyes. His mouth trembled. "No one leaves this place," he said. "Everyone tries." Michael stepped backward toward the car, but the door was locked. The key was in his hand. The door would not open. He looked through the window, and his blood ran cold. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat. It was himself. His hands were on the steering wheel. His eyes were open, but empty. He was not breathing. He looked as if he already belonged there. The fog began to move. Shapes formed behind the old man, human in height, but without faces, only empty hollows. They moved closer in silence. The old man whispered, "You were not supposed to stop." The next morning, an empty car was found on that pass. The license plate was registered. The engine was cold. The doors were locked. There was no one inside. On the back seat, a sentence had been written in mud: "Do not stop."
Fog Pass first appeared in official records in 2003. That autumn, a series of disappearances occurred in the region one after another. Most of them were isolated cases: lone drivers, night yatras, abandoned vehicles. Local police attributed the incidents to mountain roads and poor weather conditions, but the townspeople did not believe that explanation. They were careful not to speak the name of the road at all. They believed that even saying it aloud meant something was drawing closer. One of the missing was Emily Carter. She was a 26-year-old nurse who had just finished a night shift. The drive home should have taken 45 minutes. Her car was found 2 days later, just beneath the Fog Pass sign. The doors were locked. There was no one inside. On the back seat were streaks of dried mud, as if someone had gripped the seat with wet hands. Emily's disappearance drew attention in the local news. Her family pushed for answers. A state-level search and rescue team was assigned. The team consisted of 5 people. Their leader was Mark Reynolds, an experienced search and rescue specialist. With him was Jason Miller, a former soldier skilled in tracking. Sarah Klein was the only woman on the team and an expert in map reading and coordination. Tom Wilson and Brian Lee provided local support. They knew the area well, but avoided eye contact whenever Fog Pass was mentioned. The search began early in the morning. The sky was overcast. There was no fog yet, but the mountains were wrapped in a heavy silence. The team communicated through radios and began scanning the road from both sides. Mark was cautious. From the first step, he felt something strange about the place. The trees appeared denser than normal. There was no wind, but the leaves seemed to rustle, as if something were breathing. Around noon, the fog began to descend, slowly, almost without being noticed. Sarah checked the map. The compass was working correctly, but the markers looked wrong. The road seemed to be shifting away from its position on the map. Mark said it was just a visibility issue, but his voice no longer carried the same confidence. The first radio problem started with Tom. His voice came through with heavy static and then cut out completely. The team stopped. Tom walked back to retrace his steps, but returned to the same spot 5 minutes later. His face was pale. "I swear," he said, "I walked straight ahead." Mark gathered the team. He did not want panic, but the fog had thickened and visibility had dropped to only a few meters. Brian found something by the roadside, a glove. It belonged to Emily. Dried mud clung to it, but the glove was lying in the middle of the road as if it had been placed there deliberately. Then they heard a sound, distant and muffled, a woman's voice. It sounded like someone asking for help. Sarah said Emily's name. Mark told them to stay where they were, but the voice came again, this time closer. It was coming from inside the fog. Jason moved forward on instinct, shaped by his military training. He took a few steps into the fog. Mark shouted after him, but the sound vanished without echo. Jason disappeared from sight. 5 seconds later, Jason's voice came through the radio, but something was wrong. It sounded very close, yet the words were impossible to understand. It was as if the same sentence was being repeated again and again, but backwards. Sarah removed her headset with trembling hands. "This is not a human voice," she said. Mark called out to Jason. There was no response. The fog was moving now, slowly, like something alive. Tom stepped back. Brian was breathing heavily. "My heart," he said. "My heart is racing." They heard footsteps behind them, more than one. Shapes emerged from the fog, human in height but without faces, only emptiness, like dark hollows. Mark reached for his weapon, but his hands were shaking. He fired. The sound was swallowed by the fog. The shapes did not stop. Sarah suddenly screamed. Someone was standing behind her, Jason, but he had no face. Where his eyes should have been, there was only darkness. His mouth opened, and he spoke with Emily's voice. "Do not stop here," he said, but the voice was not his. Tom ran. He plunged into the fog. Seconds later, his scream was cut short. Brian dropped to his knees and began to pray. The shapes leaned toward him. Mark grabbed Sarah's arm and pulled her back, but there was no road. Everything looked the same trees, the same stones, the same silence. Crying, Sarah threw the map onto the ground. It became wet. A new line appeared on the paper. The words "Fog Pass" written in a dark red, like blood. Mark stopped. His breath caught in his throat. An old man emerged from the fog. Thin jacket, tired face. Mark felt he had seen him before, but could not remember where. The man spoke. "This place loves those who search," he said, "because they stop." Sarah screamed and ran. The fog swallowed her. Mark followed, but stopped after a few steps. In front of him was his vehicle, his own car. The door was open. Inside sat himself, radio in hand, eyes empty. He heard breathing behind him. Mark did not turn around. He did not want to. The search and rescue team never returned. According to official records, they were lost due to fog. The operation was canceled. The road was temporarily closed, but only the road was closed, not the pass. Years later, those who travel that way sometimes hear static on their radios, multiple voices speaking at once, none of them fully understandable. And sometimes they see a team inside the fog, walking, searching, never finding.
Fog Pass was a road that officially never existed. There was no clear record in federal archives of the pass ever being constructed. Its name did not appear in budget plans. In old road projects, it showed up only as a faint line. Yet on the oldest maps of the region, that line was always there. It had no name. It looked like a dark shadow drawn between the mountains. In 1931, a major road expansion project was launched in the Appalachian Mountains. The goal was to connect remote towns and improve access to coal mines. The project was overseen by a meticulous engineer named Harold Whitman. He would not order a single strike of a pickaxe without precise calculations. But Fog Pass was not part of his plans. That line had appeared on the map on its own. When Harold first noticed it, he assumed it was a mistake. He repeated the measurements, erased the line. When he checked again the next day, the line had returned. It was even darker, as if someone had pressed down deliberately. Harold did not mention this to his team, but he was uneasy. A few weeks later, he decided to personally survey the area, carrying the map with him. He took 2 workers along, Ben Thompson and Edward Hale. Both were accustomed to the mountains and were locals,
But when they saw that pass marked on the map, their expressions tightened. "That place does not exist," they said, "or it should not." Harold ignored them. There had to be a scientific explanation, perhaps an old animal trail, perhaps an abandoned path. They began walking. As the trees grew denser, the air became heavier, sounds diminished. It felt as if the world itself were narrowing. The first fog appeared that day. Ben later described it in detail in notes he wrote years afterward. He said the fog did not come directly, but from the sides, as if it were seeping out from between the mountains. While walking inside it, their sense of time distorted. When they checked their watches, the second hand was not moving. Harold opened the map again. The line now looked like a road. Its edges were defined. For the first time, it had a name written on it: Fog Pass. Ben wanted to stop. Edward wanted to turn back, but Harold moved forward. The road kept opening ahead of them, as if it had been waiting. After some time, they realized Edward was no longer behind them. They called out. There was no answer. There were footprints in the fog, but they did not lead backward. They led inward. Harold later wrote that this was the first moment he felt fear, but he did not turn back, because when he looked at the map, there was no return line, only forward. The fog thickened. Ben dropped to his knees and clutched his head. He was whispering something. Harold wrote that he heard it. Ben was speaking in his own voice, but the words did not belong to him. When Ben stood up, his face had changed. His eyes were empty. His mouth opened, but the voice that came out belonged to an old man. "Do not stop here," he said. "Keep going." Harold began to run, not to escape, but to move forward, because he felt something breathing behind him. The fog was taking shape now, forms that resembled people, but were incomplete. There were no faces, only hollows. At one point, the road ended, but the pass did not. Harold stepped into a clearing. Dozens of footprints covered the ground, layered over one another, as if laid down over years. All of them went in the same direction. In the center stood a stone. Its surface was carved. The letters were deep. "Do not stop." Harold fell to his knees and took out his notebook. The final lines were written in a trembling hand. "The pass," he wrote, "learns people. It takes their voices, erases their faces. If you stop, it copies you." The notebook was found there. Harold was not. Ben and Edward were not either. Years later, the road construction project was canceled, but the maps were printed. On the new maps, Fog Pass was there, clearly marked, as if it had always existed. In the 2000s, when digital maps began to be used, something strange was noticed. Fog Pass had not been added by users. It appeared automatically in the system. With every update, it became more defined. The road was no longer only physical. Anyone who passed through it left a trace in the system. The pass remembered them, their voices, their faces, their fears. That is why the fog sometimes speaks in familiar voices. That is why search and rescue teams disappear, because the past does not want the lost. It wants those who search. And that is why on some nights your navigation suggests a shortcut, faster, quieter. Fog Pass. Because the past does not grow through maps, it grows when people stop. And if, while listening to this story, you paused for a moment and looked around, it may have already noticed you.